In this lesson, I'll be covering Amazon CloudWatch and EventBridge. So CloudWatch is principally a performance monitoring service, and CloudWatch Metrics are one of the core features. Services will send time-ordered data points to Amazon CloudWatch. CloudWatch Alarms are a way that you can monitor those metrics and initiate actions, such as notifications, or maybe you want to trigger some kind of change in the resource. So you can look at the performance of your systems and then set an alarm to let you know if something changes. For instance, a metric is showing that the CPU is highly utilized on a system. CloudWatch Logs is a centralized collection of system and application logs, and we'll see some of the options for what you can collect a bit later on in this lesson. We then have CloudWatch Events. With CloudWatch Events, your systems are streaming system events to CloudWatch, and you can then trigger actions based on state changes, so you're monitoring for state changes. Now, CloudWatch Events has been superseded by Amazon EventBridge. You used to be able to go into both consoles and create new rules, but now you are asked to go over to EventBridge. So let's go into metrics in a bit more detail. Metrics are sent to CloudWatch for many AWS services. For example, EC2 instances will send metrics to CloudWatch every 5 minutes, and you don't have to pay anything for that. With EC2, you can enable detailed monitoring to get more granular monitoring, and that's every minute, and you have to pay a small fee. You can then install the unified CloudWatch agent to send system-level metrics for EC2 and on-premises servers. Those metrics include additional things such as memory utilization and disk usage. So for EC2, it's sending metrics such as CPU utilization, disk read operations, networking, and so on to CloudWatch, and you can then monitor using the dashboard or using other tools. As I said before, that happens every 5 minutes or every 1 minute if you enable detailed monitoring. Then you can install that unified CloudWatch agent to get additional statistics. For instance, memory and disk utilization. And that sometimes comes up in exam questions where they're testing your knowledge that you can't get memory utilization or disk utilization with the standard metrics. You must use a custom metric or install the unified CloudWatch agent. And these are known as system level metrics. So we then have CloudWatch Alarms. We've got two types. There's a metric alarm, which performs one or more actions based on a single metric, or a composite alarm, which uses a rule expression and it can take into account multiple alarms. The alarm states are OK, everything's good. Alarm, which means that your metric is outside of the threshold that you defined, or insufficient data, which is where there isn't enough data. And that's what you'll see when you first create an alarm. It will say insufficient data until it's actually got enough information. So how can this be used? Well, let's say we've got EC2 auto scaling with EC2 instances. The instances are sending utilization information for their CPU to CloudWatch. CloudWatch knows that we've exceeded a certain threshold, so the alarm state is sent to auto scaling, which will then launch additional EC2 instances. So let's move on to CloudWatch Events or EventBridge. So it is now known as EventBridge. It used to be CloudWatch Events. You can still see the events as an option in the console for CloudWatch, but you'll then get told to go to the Amazon EventBridge console. So with EventBridge, you have event sources. These are your AWS services, your custom applications, or perhaps your SaaS applications. They will then send information as events to the Amazon EventBridge event bus. The rules are used to trigger certain actions on our resources. Here, for instance, a Lambda function or a Kinesis data stream, for example. We then have CloudWatch Logs. Here you're gathering application and system logs in CloudWatch. You have defined expiration policies and you can have KMS encryption. You can send them to Amazon S3 by doing an export, Kinesis data streams, and Kinesis Data Firehose. You can also install the unified CloudWatch agent on your EC2 instances and on-premises servers. And another thing that will do, in addition to the system level metrics, is it sends logs to CloudWatch Logs. And these are your application logs and your system logs. Other services can also send information to CloudWatch Logs, for example, AWS Lambda. And remember, your function will always need permissions to be able to write to CloudWatch Logs. And the same there applies to Amazon EC2. For Amazon EC2 to send logs to CloudWatch Logs, you need to make sure your EC2 instance does have the correct permissions. So you'll need to assign an instance profile with a policy attached that provides access to CloudWatch. From CloudWatch, those logs can then be viewed in CloudWatch itself, or you could, for instance, move them to Elasticsearch. You can have real-time log processing with subscription filters, or to AWS Lambda. So just a little bit more detail on the unified CloudWatch agent, because it does come up quite a bit. This will enable you to collect internal system-level metrics from EC2 instances across operating systems, and also from on-premises servers. You can retrieve custom metrics from your applications or services using the statsd and collectd protocols. And you can collect logs from EC2 instances and on-premises servers, and that's for Windows and Linux. The agent must be installed on the server, and it can be installed on EC2 instances, on-premises servers, and the Linux, Windows Server, or macOS operating systems.